Genuinely the best case I've seen at Computex. For real, I'm not joking. This is not an April Fool's joke this time. First of all, it's not April. Secondly, Silverstone is actually making this. This is the FLP02. They are for real going into mass production. It's themed to look old. That's super cool. So on the front, there's this cluster of buttons that some of you who worked on maybe 286 through 486 era would definitely recognize. Some of the early Pentiums as well. But there's a power switch which actually does follow the lock. So this key, all of this stuff is functional, which is cool. None of this is just for looks. So the lock, that's currently unlocked. That would allow me to toggle the power. And then they're also going to have it lock and restrict the reset button once they're in mass production as well. Turbo actually does something. So this connects to a PWM hub, and pushing the turbo button says 99, and that is because it is adjusting the fan speed. So that just set the fans to basically 100% or exactly 100%. It's still a real case though. So this is based on existing tooling. We're going to get into that, but they also have some other cases here today we're going to talk about, including a more modern case, the LD05. And I'll also be joined by Tony, someone technical from Silverstone. I've been working with him for over a decade now. Cool guy, and we'll talk with him about some applications of home server type of hardware. So they have some really interesting mechanical solutions for things like video cards in rack mount server boxes that Wendell's been talking about recently. So that's what we're going to go over. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Montech HSO1 and HSO2 cases. The HSO1 and HSO2 cases differ by way of a mesh front or a curved glass front. We previously reviewed these cases in our intensive benchmarking process and found them to be overall high build quality, with thermals comparable between the two designs. The rear chamber of the case uniquely brings the power supply forward and perforates the rear wall of the case, allowing for more air movement internally while providing a different look. The rear of the case uses a fan mounting mechanism for two separate fans that can be coupled together with a plate, improving convenience. The HSO1 and HSO2 also invert with minimal effort, allowing the computer to present to the opposite side without needing to reconfigure the entire build. Learn more at the links in the description below. All right, so internally, this is set up pretty normally in some ways. The power supply shroud is present, so that power supplies in this era, a lot of them were in the top, and shrouds were rarely a thing. But there's a power supply shroud. It's punctured in the top front here. There's hard drive cage support coming down. You can see the mounts for those here. So they've actually got a number of drive cages. It's actually 5 1/4 as well. So this, for what represents a floppy, actually is functional. So that is a lock, and releasing it allows the, let me try and do this one-handed, there we go, allows the slot cover to come out. And so this mechanism, they were telling us, is actually very difficult from a manufacturing perspective, just because it can create a kind of a weaker point. So what they might change it to, it sounds like, is this 3D printed mock-up. So this is also a front cover. Again, it's a 3D print, and it functions the same way on the front, but on the back, they've got a much stronger and more resilient mechanism for it. So that's probably what's going to MP. But pretty cool stuff. Internally, so the back currently has a 120 mil fan. It can fit a 140. The top can actually fit a 360. So it's got some of the modern features you would get. And it also has a vertical GPU mount option. Now this is only a 2-slot wide mount. You'd be pretty restricted based on what kind of card you put in there. And then there is also a vertical GPU support. So this is also a more modern feature. You wouldn't have needed that back in the day. But otherwise, the rest of it's probably pretty familiar. Now, I asked Silverstone if there were any specific sources of inspiration for this, and the answer was, well, we basically Googled old computers and picked bits and pieces from all of them that we liked, and then we made this box. So fair enough. For ventilation on the front, computers back in this era, if they want to be era appropriate, which they do, really wouldn't have breathed a whole lot. So this is the only area for intake on the front. The top you lose to the drives and to the display, which is totally fine. That's what they're trying to do. And then the actual top panel of the case is more standard. So that comes off. It's got a dust filter in it. And then you can see down there they've got multiple radiator size options. And so that looks kind of more typical. Backside's got all the modern cable management. So it's just a mix of things, old and new. For pricing, it's supposed to be probably $220. There's a giant maybe on there, because that is based on the current tariff situation. So that might change. For the European audience, they're looking at less than 200 euros, might be around 200 euros. It's probably a more reliable number to go on because it's more stable right now. And otherwise, the remainder, they're just trying to do things like hide as much of the modern feature set as possible, like this, because they don't want to break the immersion of the older system. So this is the FLP02, and it's using the same tooling as the set of Q1, H1, and D1 computer cases, and those are already on the market. So basically any review of those, the tooling would be shared internally, and then it's just everything else has been updated, or de-updated, I guess, as it were. So let's move on to the next one. This is super cool. We're actually going to review this because it is ATX, so it'll fit our normal bench, but let's go over to something more modern. All right, so this is the Silverstone LD05. Massive change in how it looks. If you wanted a more modern fish tank approach, I guess, rather than the FLP02, this is what they're trying for it. So biggest things up front, they're trying to hit a $100 price target. Once again, that has an asterisk attached to it, which is it depends on the tariff situation. So that there's currently a pause on some of them. Not all the tariffs are gone. It's still something, depending on who you ask, like 30+%. So that may change, but they're trying to hit $100 for the US market. The plan is to include 3 120 mil fans that are ARGB. And in terms of the fan mount locations, there's 2 on the side here. So these are 2 120s. There's a fan in the back, as typical, 120. And then there's space in the top for 120 or 140. Currently, they have 3 120s up there. For the rest of the paneling, so power supply shroud top is ventilated, and actually underneath that, down inside the case, is the hard drive cage, which they've punctured through the top as well. So, I mean, technically, it can breathe through it if you're not using the cage. Probably better just remove it if you're not using it. But really, where the air is going to come from for any fans that are mounted, shroud top, which is an option, would be through these heavily ventilated side panels. So this is good to see, is the perforations, and they've actually continued that down here. Now, in some of our testing, depending on the case, puncturing the sides, so this ends up mounting like that. One of the challenges that some of the companies have run into with like a slat design can be the blade pass frequency on slats. So generally speaking, we prefer to see either like just the holes or some kind of pattern that's a little more random than slats, which they've done here. This is just a square pattern. So there's some distance which will help with acoustics. Otherwise, standard intake positioning, drive cage, some cable management space, nothing too special back here. And then they've got white cables on the case to try and match the case coloring. The coloring on some of these cables is a little different between them, but this is pretty much their modern ATX case for this year. I think the FLP02 is going to take it, though, for the more interesting ones. Let's do a quick update on some of the cases from last year, and then we'll jump into some of the server type stuff. All right, so just some quick updates on some of these. So this is the T1, and behind me is the T2. I'm just going to start. So pricing wise, probably about $1,000, and hopefully, well, I don't know, it's going to be over $1,000. But you start looking at things like again, a 30% tariff, and on top of $1,000, that is up very fast. So not sure where it'll land, but the T2 is pretty cool. We showed a case similar to this last year at the booth. This is an aluminum shell, and then just to run through some of the features again. So side panel down here pulls off like that. That reveals one of 2 power supplies currently installed. The other one's next to it. At the back of the case, you can see both. There's drive mounts down here in the middle here and to the front, and then there's a ton of drive cages here. So this is basically like a home, I don't know, server rendering farm type of thing. It's got 11 slots for PCIe devices, making it one of the larger cases on the market for PCIe support. And then these rail systems allow you to basically mount whatever you want, wherever you want. So we showed this last year, a version of it anyway, in a previous video. I'll link it below, but the changes were some of the exterior ones we looked at, and then also stuff like this, where this is now at a canted angle up in here, and this plate, let's see how I can do this one-handed, there we go, it comes off like that. And then on the bottom as well, there's another one with a pull tab that pops out like that and reveals the interior of the case. So just thought it was kind of cool, but very expensive, not something we would put in our ATX case benchmarks. It does have 180s installed in it right now, though. Last thing we're going to do is look at some of the server stuff, and for that, I'll be joined by Tony. All right, so now I'm joined by Tony from Silverstone. Tony's been our main technical contact with all the details for all the products for a very long time. Tony, when did we first start working together?
I believe it was CES 2013 when you came to our suite.
I wanted to jump on camera with you to talk through some of this, because one of the things we were talking about before filming was home server or home lab type builds are getting way more common, and people who watch Wendell, which he works with you also, you would see Wendell covering this stuff all the time. So Tony, you've got a couple, like 3 cool things to talk about. Let's walk through some of the solutions.
Yeah, so over here we have the new RM24502. So this is our brand new 2U server chassis. That's really maybe the first of its kind in the retail market that's built around liquid cooling. So in conjunction with this chassis, we're also introducing our 2 new 80 millimeter based AIOs.
And I'll jump in too to say a friend of GN, Adam from PC World, really likes this cooler specifically. So yeah.
Yeah, so I was telling Adam that we've been working on server stuff for quite a few years now. Most of our customers for this type of products are system integrators.
Is it starting to go more consumer though? Are you seeing more crossover?
Yeah, actually, we started doing enthusiast cases first, right? All the way back in starting 2004. So we had a lot of experience doing all of those things. So we integrated some of that into our server chassis. So they've been pretty successful. And I've seen a lot of users. They actually started to use some of our server chassis as their home PCs, actually. In the, I guess, the server market, if you want to go high density, you need to have like smaller cases like this, is 2U. So the biggest fan you can fit is 80 millimeters. So that's why I kind of alluded to you, Adam from PC World is a small form factor enthusiast.
Yeah.
So whatever you see here that we're developing for the data center or AI server market
Is for Adam specifically.
It could be filtered down. The one on the bottom here with the 3 80 millimeter fans, this one will hit 280 watts TDP. And the one on top here with the 5 80 millimeter fans, they can hit 400 watts. So this is a lot better than anything you can get just by air cooling these in the 2U environment.
How about this? Can you walk me through the mechanical and the solution here?
Okay, so as you can imagine with the 2U, if you're using a standard sized 2U case, you're limited to low profile cards in the standard, I guess, slots. So to get around that, if you want to use anything that's dual slots or greater, we have this kit that you can optionally purchase to convert this. So this has a riser card included. This is a PCIe Gen 5 riser card. So your motherboard needs to support bifurcation so that you can turn one of the by 16 slot into 2 by 8 slot. This way, you could easily fit one of these dual slot cards inside this chassis.
Pretty cool. How about, there's another thing you're doing with video cards here. So fitting a more traditional card. Let's go through this one.
Yeah, so we're also announcing at the show that we will have our first 3U chassis. So there's 2 different versions. So this one here is pretty standard. It's designed for regular workstation card that's normal height, right? So you can see this really simple, nice and compact. So it also fits a 360 AIO. This is about the limit of what you can fit. So we have the second model here called the RM32 that has this bracket here on top. So if I lift this up, yep.
So it's got a riser on it, I guess.
So here's a riser ribbon cable that you can connect to your PCI Express slot and then extend up. So we have these contraption here that will help you secure your very heavy gamer card inside this 3U chassis. So what we're also doing is that through our thermal testing, which we do for all of our chassis, is that in order to actually dissipate the heat generated by this gaming card, you need to actually double stack your AIOs to generate enough air pressure to actually push enough air through the graphics card. And we also have this fan bracket here that you can mount to the back of the chassis.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
To help exhaust the fan out.
So 280 mils, I guess?
Yeah, 280 mil.
Okay.
So these are also 80 by 38 millimeter thick. So they can generate a lot of airflow.
Cool.
As well.
So something to think about for people is, and again, this kind of comes up where I've been working with Wendell a lot lately on things. I'll switch over. possibility of doing some kind of home server or lab type build as a new kind of PC building project. So I've had a lot of fun building NASs and things like that. And Wendell, last time he came over, he actually brought a Silverstone case. And I'll make sure, I just want to make sure you know, he spoke very highly of Silverstone's chassis intrusion switch.
Okay.
So
thank you very much, Wendell.
And that'll be it for this one. Thanks for watching, Tony. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time.